Hello, everybody. Good afternoon or good morning, whenever you are watching this. My name is Alejandra Santos. I am with Hoven, like Irma said, and today we are going to be doing a presentation on how to choose to refuse drugs. So, we're going to be discussing the dangers of substance use, as well as giving you some strategies to help your child combat peer pressure and ways to promote a drug free lifestyle. And before we get into different substances and the harm it can cause in young people, I want to go over the data from the Texas School Survey that was conducted in 2018. It is conducted every 2 years, so next year we should be getting a brand new data. So just so you guys can kind of get a glimpse and be aware of what's happening in Bear County where your students are attending. So, the average age of first use for tobacco in Texas is 13 and a half. But for Region 8, we're 13.9. So, we're about at the average age all over Texas. As far as average age of first use of alcohol in the state of Texas, it's 13.1. And here in Region 8 of Bexar County, we are 13.2. So again, we're about average. And then this was a question that was asked on the survey if anybody had driven a car after a good bit to drink. So this was given to all students at all schools. So in Texas, it was 4.5% of students said they had driven a car after a good bit to drink. And here in Bexar County in Region 8, it was 8.5% have said that they have driven a car after a good bit to drink. So we are half above average for the state. So you kind of see that this has been a problem in our area. And then the average age of first use of marijuana in the state of Texas, it's 14, and in Region 8 here in Bexar County, it's 14.1. So we're about average for this age as well. And I don't know about you, but just thinking about this, 13 and 14 seems really, really young to me. But this is where we need to realize that this is the age that our students are first using these substances. So just to be aware of that whenever regarding your own child. And you can find this on the prcregion8.org. So, some dangers of underage drinking. So, alcohol is the most commonly used substance among young people in the United States. Excessive drinking is responsible for more than 3,500 deaths and 210,000 years of potential life loss among people under age at 21 of each year. So some dangers of underage drinking is that they can have some school problems. So if students are underage drinking, they have a higher rates of absences and have lower grades. They can have some social problems such as fighting or lack of participation in youth activities. They can get into legal problems such as arrest for driving or physically hurting someone while drunk. Physical problems such as hangovers or illnesses. They can have unwanted, unplanned, or unprotected sexual activity. There's an increased risk of suicide and homicide, alcohol-related motor vehicle crashes, and other unintentional injuries such as burns, falls, or drowning. They can have memory problems, changes in the brain development that may have lifelong effects, and then also alcohol poisoning. And not only does underage drinking affect young people, but it also affects adults if they are the one providing the alcohol to their child or to their children's friends. So in 2016, San Antonio became the second city in Texas to pass a civil social host ordinance. So the social host ordinance holds a homeowner, private owner, property owner, or renter responsible when they allow minors with the environment to drink. So if found in violation, you would be charged with fines. So I know a lot of parents have been thinking like if their child's gonna be drinking, they'd rather them have be drinking in their own homes. Um, but like I said, if you're offering alcohol to minors in your home, you can be affected with fines as well. Some dangers of tobacco. So some symptoms of use can have smelly hair, clothes and breath, yellowing of teeth, coughs, increased asthma attacks. And if someone doesn't have asthma, it can cause asthma as well. Shortness of breath, increased blood pressure and heart rate, and poor athletic performance. And some dangers of tobacco is addiction, respiratory problems such as emphysema and chronic bronchitis, heart and cardiovascular disease, stroke, and various cancers. And dangers of marijuana is symptoms of use that young people can have are mood swings, slow thinking and reflexes, dilated pupils, increased appetite, impaired balance and coordination, dry mouth, increased pulse rate, impaired learning, impaired attention and memory, sleepiness, anxiety, panic attacks, delusions, and hallucinations. So some dangers of marijuana is that it can lead to addiction. So there's a lot of miseducation out there when it comes to marijuana because they think it's natural, it comes from a plant, you can't get addicted to it. But nowadays, with the manufacturing and how marijuana is now grown and the pesticides they use, they are able to have the THC level, which is the part of the marijuana plant um, that causes those feelings like impaired learning, all of those symptoms of use. Um, it can they have such a high rate of THC level that it becomes addicted. So it's not the same marijuana that was back in the day. The THC levels are very high and very dangerous as well. Breathing problems include inflammation in the airways and symptoms of chronic bronchitis, such as daily cough and phlegm. Short term declines in memory, attention, and learning, which of course is very dangerous for our students and for our youth and young people because they're in school. They need all their memory that they can get. They need the attention to focus in school and, of course, to learn. And I wanted to talk about vaping because it's very popular nowadays among the youth. So these are some things that you need to know about vaping. Most e-cigarettes contain nicotine. Nicotine is highly addictive and can harm adolescent brain development. Using nicotine can make it harder for young people to concentrate, learn, and control impulses. Nicotine can train their brain to make it easier for them to be addicted to other drugs. So they can start with vaping, but the nicotine can affect their brain development and make their brain highly addictive. So they can be addicted to other hardcore drugs out there. E-cigarettes contain other harmful substances besides nicotine. They contain large amounts of metal as well, which can impact their lungs. Young people who use cigarettes are more likely to smoke cigarettes in the future. And then vaping pens can also be used to smoke marijuana. So this one's really important. We're going to go back to marijuana being smoked in vaping pens. And if you see the picture on the screen, these are just some of the types of vape electronic cigarettes that are out on the market. Um, they have they look they are very small. They look like USB pens. You have to really pay attention to your child and pay attention to what's in their room because it could look like a USB, it could look like nothing, but really it's a vape pen. And then also it's really discreet because there is smoke that comes out of it, but it really vaporizes into the air very fast. So you could miss it. They could be doing it in their rooms, and you wouldn't even notice. So there's lots of different things that come across vaping that are really, which is why young youth are using it because it's easy to hide in plain sight. And there's also different flavors that make it really appealing to young people, such as like cotton candy, cherry, different flavors like that that they find interesting and find appealing. Um, so here is a video from Ken's 5. I'm going to share my video screen.
Good evening. I'm Aaron Wright.
And I'm Deborah Knapp. We begin with a story that affects every student in Texas.
Tonight, there's talk of easing the severe penalties for a student caught on campus with THC oil in a vaping device.
As it stands, it is a mandatory expulsion from school with the possibility of a felony prosecution.
Eyewitness News reporter Marvin Hurst discovered the state's well-intended law has some unintentional consequences.
Audits are out there. So is the law, but that hasn't stopped Texas students from taking in the experience.
We know that this is a huge problem, not just here, not just in this city, but all across the country. The CDC calls vaping an epidemic.
Health officials say vaping illnesses are climbing towards 2,200 cases nationwide, with more than 40 deaths on record. They are using vaping pens, which heat up nicotine, THC oil. Out comes an aerosol containing elements that can be toxic.
There's a growing consensus in the state, I believe, and all the agencies are looking at this, that we have to take action and stop these mandatory expulsions in vaping cases.
Vaping on school campuses or at school-related activities is not permitted. Texas outlawed the recreational use of THC in any form. So students found with THC oil in vaping.
If there is a student who happens to have a vape, and then there is reasonable suspicion that that vape could contain THC, we will test it right then and there.
Even a small amount are subject to mandatory expulsion and felony prosecution.
I believe that is wrong. The school district in every case should consider consequences less drastic.
Kevin Collins is a former juvenile prosecutor turned juvenile defense attorney who believes vaping THC oil and the law could use a new set of eyes.
If a child takes 2 ounces of weed in school, think about how much THC is in there. It's a lot more than a little bit in the damn thing, right? But that's a misdemeanor.
In Bexar County, Northeast ISD has 43 vape THC oil expulsions since starting on-site testing for the drug this year. Northside ISD jumped to 192 expulsions, even after consulting attorneys to find flexibility in the law to keep students from getting expelled and arrested.
I think it's one thing to interpret the law and be aware of what the law says you can do, but I think it's also critically important for us that we understand if the law also allows for consideration of other factors.
Unless those students have the parental structure for homeschooling or the money to attend private school, they are sent to a juvenile justice academy where they mix with offenders of more serious crimes. And at the Bexar County Juvenile Justice Academy, more kids are being held for felony drug offenses than for any other crime. And among those offenders, vaping cases top the list.
The severity of the punishment, in my mind, does not fit the crime.
We took those concerns to State Representative Leo Pacheco, who sits on the House committee that reviews state laws. He believes this may be a case of unintentional consequences.
We've got 16, 17-year-olds that may have done something wrong, and having a felony on their record shouldn't prevent them from going to an Ivy League school or some good colleges.
So he says his committee will examine the law to possibly reconsider the penalties, because no one wants to see a young life go up in smoke. Marvin Hurst, Ken's 5, Eyewitness News.
Okay, we're back. So you can see from that video that this is, like she said in the video, that this is an epidemic. And actually, before COVID hit, I was in a work group with Metro Health and other people around the city who are who really are care about this topic and who really want to fight and combat vaping in young people. But then the pandemic hit, and of course Metro Health was very busy with that, but we are looking to start that work group up again soon because this has really been a problem. As you saw, that so many kids, after just one mistake of them bringing a vape pen to school, getting caught with it, they are getting expelled from school, and then they are being charged with a felony. um, because they brought it onto a school campus. So they're ruining their whole future over one event. So I encourage you to speak to your children about this, about vaping in general, what it could do to your brain and to their development, but also things that they may not know, such as getting this on their record, a felony on their record. So um, so that they can have better chances in the future with getting into colleges. And then if they're caught with this as well, they can also, this can impact their financial aid in college as well. So keep that in mind. Talk with your students, let them know. And I did want to bring a, a case up. So there was a case in Austin actually where a 17-year-old was found, thought he was buying a CBD oil vape pen. So CBD, as of this year, is now legal in Texas. Of course, a 17-year-old should not be purchasing it. It's for 21 and up, but they are able to get their hands on it. He thought he was buying one of those vape pens, but they tested it and it had THC levels in it. So then he was placed under arrest and charged as an adult because he was already 17. So just for one mistake, his whole future went up in flames. So just talk about it. And as far this Ken's 5 video was from 2019. As far as 2020 goes, the vape laws are still the same as 2019. They are still having high cases of schools sending students to the Juvenile Justice Academy in Bexar County. And actually, during my work group that I had mentioned, there was people from the Juvenile Justice Academy who said that they are just packed with students who got in trouble with vape, and they don't really have any more room for students anymore. So this has been, we're in a pandemic and we're also facing an epidemic when it comes to vaping. So talk about it with your students. It's an important topic to reach. So, how to help your children combat peer pressure. Students start to face peer pressure as young as elementary school. It could be not necessarily for drugs, but it can be for any other kind of thing of not following the school rules, of bullying. That can be also lead to peer pressure. And so some ways that you can help your children is to set clear rules or boundaries and communicate your expectations. So be clear about what you want to ask of your kids, like no drinking's allowed, no smoking. Also about never getting in a car with someone who has been drinking, and providing a curfew for your child. Children really do thrive on boundaries and rules. So if you lay out clear expectations and rules, it'll help them know what to do, and also will help with resisting peer pressure because they know the punishment that they could get if they were to be found drinking or smoking by you. The second one is become familiar with your child's friends and peers. So you kind of get a feeling of your child's peer group, what's going on already in their life, what topics they're discussing. And then If you allow, if you make your children's friends feel comfortable with coming to your home, then your child will want them to come over to their house instead of going somewhere else that could be unsupervised. And also get to know the parents of your child's friends, so you guys will be able to communicate with them as needed. And then the third one, help your child discover his or her interests and strengths and develop positive self confidence. So it is proven that if a child has a high self esteem, they are less likely to have peer pressure, or less likely to do I'm so sorry. So less likely to use substances. So they're more likely to resist peer pressure if they have a high self confidence. Number four, provide opportunities for children and their peers to be involved in games and projects with you at home. So make your child part of your work group in your family. Make them have jobs in your family so that they feel like they're really involved rather than they're just spectators at their home. Number five, assist your child in managing social pressures and anxieties. So just listening and asking questions and expressing your support. So this is where you would refrain from judgment or getting after them if they ask you a question, so that they're able to come back to you in the future when they have issues. Number six, encourage your child's independent thinking. So support your child in forming his or her own views so that they can make healthy decisions, and encourage them to make decisions for themselves as they're growing up, so that they feel like when they get older, they can rely on themselves. And then teach your child the skills to say no if needed. So, again, this is starting them young, being able to say no to other people when they're uncomfortable. A strong sense of self can help children make their own choices. And, like I said, develop trust in themselves and act as leaders in their own peer group. So, they will lead instead of follow. So, they'll be less likely to fall under peer pressure. And then the last one is show empathy for your child's anxieties and the feelings that come with peer pressure. So try to put yourself in your child's shoes. Look at things from their perspective. I know a lot of time as adults, we kind of undermine children's feelings, or like, oh, you'll get over that. Like, you're so young, especially like, I think it comes to like maybe your child's first heartbreak. Like, oh, that's like high school puppy love. It wasn't serious anyway. Like, don't disregard their feelings, so that they're able to come to you. So just listen and value your child's feelings and put yourself in their shoes. And then some 5 conversation goals when talking to your children about alcohol and other drugs. Studies have shown that children are more likely to open up when they are in a car with you. So, not necessarily sitting down face to face where you guys are staring at each other and having these hard, difficult conversations, and maybe uncomfortable conversations for them. So, they're more likely to open up and communicate with you when you're driving on a trip or going to the grocery store and having multiple conversations about these. So, the first one would show you disapprove of underage drinking and other drug misuse. So, over 80% of young people ages 10 to 18 say their parents are the leading influence on their decision whether to drink or not. So, if you communicate with your student, with your child, and tell them that you disapprove and you would not tolerate that in your home, they're less likely to use drugs and alcohol. And then show you care about your child's health, wellness, and success. So young people are more likely to listen when they know that you're on their side. Reinforce why you don't want your child to drink or use other drugs, because you want your child to be happy and safe and healthy. So just like when we were going over the dangers of substances, you can go back to that list and show them like, this can happen to your body, this can happen. You can have smelly teeth. You lose concentration. You won't have as good memory. You won't have control on your impulses. So just going back to the facts. And that kind of goes to my next one. Show you're a good source of information about alcohol and other drugs. So if your child comes to you about a substance, about whether it's alcohol or smoking, you'll want to give them valid information, give them the facts, and if they're and don't brush them off, because if they're curious, they're and you brush them off, they're still going to want to know the answer. So they are going to either ask their friends for the information, or they're going to Google it. And you want to make sure that they're getting correct information. So you'd rather it come from you than from their friends or from the internet. Show you're paying attention and you'll discourage risky behaviors. So show that you're aware of what your child is up to. Because a lot of times, of course, if your child notices that you don't really pay attention to them or you don't notice what they're doing, they're probably going to do all of those risky behaviors because they feel like they can get away with it. So make sure that they know, like, you're paying attention, you're interested in their life, you want to know who they're hanging out with or who's going to be there. So this will discourage them from doing those risky behaviors. And then 5, build your child's skills and strategies for avoiding drinking and drug use. So this also goes back to my last slide about the peer pressure and how to build those. So you can definitely use those 8 steps that I said in the last slide for this part. And then resources. Drugfree.org has drug prevention tips for every age. So it starts from 2 years old all the way to 25-year-old and comes up with various scenarios for that age group. So I believe for 2 years old, it starts with vitamins. So being able to have these different conversations when they're smaller to as they get older is really helpful. So you can go to this website and look it up and try to see different scenarios that are on there, so it can help you gather some tips on how you're going to have this conversation or what you're going to say during this conversation with your child. And I did put one. So this is an example scenario for teenagers, which is 13 through 18. So the scenario is that your teen is starting high school and you want to remind them that they do not have to give in to peer pressure to vape, drink, or use substances. So this is something that you could say during that conversation. High school will be a fun time in your life, and we want you to enjoy yourself with your friends. But we also know you might experience pressure to drink alcohol, vape, or use marijuana or other substances. A lot of people feel like this is just a normal part of being a teenager. It isn't. Most teens actually don't do these things. You'll have lots of decisions to make for yourself, and you might even make some mistakes. Just know that you can talk to us about anything, anytime, even if you do make a mistake or feel stuck in a situation and need our help. We won't freak out, and together we'll figure out a way to help you. So that's kind of bringing everything back, like I mentioned in the last league. You're showing empathy. You're putting yourself in their shoes. You're being supportive. You're talking about how dangerous it is. So this is a good conversation starter for you to have with your child when it comes to peer pressure. And they have many different ones on, like, marijuana, on drinking, on going to parties. So I encourage you to go to that website and check it out. So, answering the tough questions. I know as a prevention person, I go out into the field and I talk to kids from elementary level all the way to high school, and they ask me the tough questions. So I know as parents, you are definitely getting them. So one of the questions, I know the one question I always get is, Miss, do you smoke? Do you drink? Because I'm going out there and telling them, don't do this, don't do that. So they always ask that for me as well. So you probably get, why is alcohol bad? Especially if you drink it. So you don't try to scare your child about drinking. Just tell your child that alcohol can be bad for his or her growing brain, and it interferes with judgment and can make them feel sick. And also, going back to the slides where I was mentioning all the dangers of that substance use, you can bring that back. But the most important thing for substances abuse for underage or for young people is their brain. Their brain is still developing. It's not going to be fully developed until they're 25. And the last thing that develops in their brain is actually their decision making. So they're not making the best decisions as young people. So just reminding them of that they're not ready for this. It can really interfere with their brain development, interfere with their learning. And then once children hear the facts and opinions about them, it's easier for you to make rules and enforce them. And also, and also, um, also just reminding them, like if they mention that, well, you're drinking it, you can say that you drink. Why do you drink alcohol? Either you're doing it to enhance a meal, or you are celebrating, different things like that. And then just reminding them that you drink in moderation, just so you can go back to it and then say, like, I'm an adult, my brain is fully developed, and my body is able to handle it. The second one is, I got invited to a party, can I go? And this is especially for those who are in high school, maybe middle school. Like I said, from the Texas school survey, we saw that the ages started at 13, which is a middle school age. So some questions: ask an adult, ask your child if an adult will be present at the party, if if drinking will be happening at this party. And then remind your child that even being at a party, even if they're not drinking themselves, but if there's drinking happening at the party, they can get in trouble as well. And then let them know they can always say no, and they can leave if they are uncomfortable. And then the last one, did you drink when you were a kid? So this kind of goes back to you, remind your child that underage drinking is against the law, and and for a good reason. Point out again with their brains that it can physically, hurt their brains developmentally. And then you and if you did use it, this is a good teaching moment, like maybe some mistakes you made while you were drinking, and kind of, show light on that, of where you wish you didn't, or you wish this didn't happen because so and so happened, or something happened while you were drinking as a kid. So just giving them straight answers, being honest with them as well, because kids always know when you're lying or when you're telling them the truth. They're like little, radars for that. And then again, that's all I have for you for today. So thank you for joining me. I hope you heard some new information and you guys got some good tools. You can follow, these are my social media platforms at Hovind. Facebook is usually where we target parents and we leave, helpful tips and, different things like that for parents to use. So if you have any questions, you can email, Idma, and she will get you my contact information. So thank you everybody for joining.